Welcome back to another video of the Fontainer. Here's just a wrap up of Newcastle versus Leeds, our third Premier League game of the season. Newcastle playing away at Ellen Road on Saturday afternoon. The game was live on Sky Sports. And an absolutely bore draw. Again, very much similar to the first game of the season. Absolutely toothless. Pretty much close to zero goal threat. But let's go through the game. So Newcastle were in there a blue and orange away kit. It's interesting how when the team's not performing well, I don't really seem to fall in love with the kit. There was good news in the sense that Tonali and Shaw were fit enough to start. They were substituted in the epic game on Monday night against Liverpool, but Eddie Howe chose to start them again. Jacob Ramsey made his first start for Newcastle in the central of midfield. But from the kickoff, it was clear that the same old, toothless Newcastle were about to show that they had no bite up front. Willisula was given his big chance. I mean, you're up against a relegated opposition. I mean, Leeds United got battered by Arsenal on the previous weekend. Willisula, quite rightly, probably justified his starting lineup. I mean, who else are we going to play up there? We don't have anyone else that we could call upon, but unfortunately he failed his audition. There were some kind of good touches from him, coming short, getting the ball, laying it off. And when he does that, you kind of think to yourself, well, turn and go. But he kind of just ambles forward back to the front and doesn't give anybody that second run for the wingers to either play off of. Unfortunately for Asula, another chance missed for him to stake a claim to stay with the Magpies this season. I can't even see him coming on in games when we are 2-0 up or anything. I think a loan move might be best for him at this stage of his career, possibly to a lower tier in England or somewhere abroad where he can get some good minutes under his belt. But nonetheless, I think the starting lineup seemed to be a little bit defensive from Eddie Howe. I've seen some negative comments in terms of them being a promotion side. Why don't we just go gung-ho at them? But I think the worst thing that Newcastle wanted was to go behind in the game, where they're obviously struggling to get goals anyway. So I think Eddie Howe probably set the side out to say, look, let's just, whatever we do, let's keep a clean sheet. And if we can nick a goal, we're probably going to win the game. But unfortunately, that just didn't come to fruition for the Geordies. I think Bruno seemed to have lost a little bit of his spark from the Liverpool game. Obviously understandable, so he put in a mammoth shift in the midfield for Newcastle on Monday night. The tank seemed to be running a little bit empty. Nonetheless, he wasn't the worst performer for us. I do think Jacob Ramsey seemed a little bit lost. It's going to be interesting to see what role Eddie asks him to play this season in midfield. Whether he's going to be an 8 who's kind of going to be, arriving late into the box. That just didn't seem to happen yesterday. He was taken off at half-time. He did get a knock just before the half-time whistle. Apparently his ankle swelled up pretty badly. So hopefully over the international break he can sort that out. But yeah, it was an absolute dire watch. I don't think we made the most of our set pieces. Our corners and our free kicks don't seem to be challenging at all. Tonali seems to be taking the free kicks and also the corners on the right hand side. Again, just not able to beat that first man. And I think we've seen, particularly with Arsenal and their set pieces, how beating that first man and having a whipped quality delivery makes a difference to the team in terms of scoring that goal. I mean, we've got really good players who can head the ball in terms of Dan Burn, Fabian Shaw, obviously Botman as well, but we just didn't seem to make the most of it. I think that might have been a good avenue to go down, just making the most of set pieces. But, there was the rhetoric around the whole game was about us missing a striker. We did have Nick Voltemade in the stands, which was good to see. He's obviously going to be gagging to start for the Magpies soon after the international break. I do think there's going to be a lot of expectation on him, obviously with the Isak thing and Wilson going and Asula not firing at all. All kind of focus is going to be on Nick Voltemade to get us the goals. That's a lot of pressure for a 22-year-old at that price as well. I did also see another comment to say, what if Nick Voltemade does his cruciate, touch wood, in the first game of the season. I did see a comment on social media saying, what if Nick Voltemade gets injured, in the first game of the season? That's absolutely mid-table for us if that happens, which I think is a very fair comment. I just think we need to take a bit of a chill pill and realise that the goals are going to have to come from different avenues this season, whether it's from Gordon, Barnes, Murphy, Elanga. It obviously hasn't happened in the first 3 games of the season. We just seem to be lacking that creativity in midfield. I wonder if Lewis Miley might get more opportunities to kind of unlock little passes in that final third of the pitch. He did come on, he played okay, but we seem to be kind of, camped outside their box in those last 20-25 minutes without any real ideas. The ball, they didn't seem to be keen to want to put the ball in. Asula's not the guy who's going to kind of, muscle his way a la Harry Maguire and get that goal for you with his head. And I do think Newcastle do lack a slight plan C in terms of how, if you're going to get a goal in the last 10-15 minutes, where's it going to come from? We'll talk about Isak in a minute, but I think it's very evident, and I think everyone knows this, what Isak gave us last season. Obviously, he took all the penalties for us, but he was able to just create something out of nothing in terms of pace or skill and quality. So, fingers crossed, Voltemade hits the ground running after the international break, but not a great start to the Premier League season. 3 games already gone. You could argue we should probably have drawn against Liverpool, and we should definitely have won against Villa. So we should really have been on 7 points, but 2 points is not a great return, considering especially how well Sunderland have started the season. But we can't get away from the Alexander Isak update. We are approaching 24 hours and counting towards the end of the transfer window, which has been a interesting and very dramatic summer for Newcastle, one that we didn't expect when the season ended last season, obviously winning that first piece of silverware and finishing in the Champions League. It was supposed to be a summer of growth, about development, about looking forward. Instead, we've kind of been stuck in second gear the majority of the season. We have spent a lot of money, recruiting in the goalkeeper, central defender, the right winger we've been crying about, and obviously the central midfield. Eventually, obviously, at the end of the week, we got Voltemade over the line for a reported £69 million. But let's be honest, the whole summer has been dominated by the Alexander Isak saga. So where are we now? Well, we've got one striker in the shape of Voltemade. The fact that it's been a club record fee makes you think perhaps that's Isak on his way out. Eddie Howe was obviously asked after the game, and he did say he's looking to bring one more player in. Whether that's in the striker department, that obviously seems the most likely. The 2 players most spoken about and most likely are Visa and Strand Larsen from Wolves. Both players didn't play at all for their teams yesterday in the Premier League, so you would think it's going to be either one of them 2. Visa's gone on today and done a full Isak as well, in terms of saying that he wants to leave the club via his social media. The difference with Visa slightly is that he said that he does have an agreement in writing that if a reasonable offer came in for him over the summer, that he would and should be allowed to leave. Whether or not that conversation was had before and Brumo went to Man United or not, I'm not sure. I mean, Otara seems to be doing well for them. He was supposed to be the Visa replacement, and as soon as he came in, Visa was going to be allowed to go. But to be completely honest with you, my personal view is that I don't want Johan Visa at Newcastle. I think it's hypocritical for us to criticise Alexander Isak's approach towards Newcastle in terms of refusing to play. I know the argument is that Wiese hasn't refused to play, but I just think the way he's gone about it is too similar to Alexander Isak's approach for us to kind of separate the two instances. I just think the attitude is not something that Eddie Howe would like around the club in terms of the hypocrisy and the double standards. I think Newcastle, since the PIF have taken over, seem to be doing everything the right way. Even if you look at Voltemade and his interview, he seems like a very family man. He spoke a lot about his parents and speaking to them and their view on him joining Newcastle and coming to another country. And that's the kind of player that Newcastle wants to attract to the club. Someone with deep morals, somebody, a good egg, shall we say. But yeah, if we're not going to go for Wiese, that then obviously leaves Strand Larsen. I did say in my last video, Wolves are going to be holding out for 60 million on Strand Larsen. We've obviously had 2 bids for him turned down already. If you look at the 69 paid for Voltemade and you look at the 60 for Strand Larsen, that leaves you with around 130 million, which coincidentally is the fee being mooted for Alexander Isak. With 24 hours to go in the transfer window, those are the 2 names I suppose we're going to be looking at. It's whether Newcastle bring in Strand Larsen or whether or not they go left field and get someone completely who hasn't been spoken about. I do think it's funny how Fabrizio Romano and David Ornstein never knew anything about the Voltemade deal. These are the journalists who are supposed to be in the know and breaking news and here we go, etc. And Newcastle flew underneath the radar completely and just went bang, yeah, we've got Voltemade on late on Friday afternoon. So I would take what Fabrizio Romano and what David Ornstein say with a complete pinch of salt. These guys know about as much as you and me. They might get asked to leak a few stories from agents here and there, but I highly doubt they're getting official statements from the clubs themselves. So in terms of Alexander Isak, he's probably hoping and betting that Newcastle sign Strand Larsen, because if that happens, yeah, that means Alexander Isak is a goner. He can pack his bags and he can go. But if Newcastle don't get a second striker, which again is possible and very likely in terms of PIF standing their ground and not wanting to set a precedent for other players in the club, then it looks like Isak might remain a Newcastle player. I mean, this is on an absolute knife edge. It's gone one way, then it's gone the other one. I think after Voltemade came, that everyone was saying, that's Isak gone. But Newcastle, remember what they said in their statement in response to Alexander Isak was about meeting conditions of the sale. And the conditions of the sale, as we've all known this season, is that we need 2 strikers through the door. That is not Asula and Voltemade, that is Voltemade plus 1. If we do not get the plus 1 in the next 24 hours, whether that's Wiese or Strand Larsen or somebody else left field, then that means Alexander Isak is going to remain a Newcastle player. And that's going to add a new chapter to the saga in terms of what he does about that. Alexander Isak has been called up to the Sweden squad, so let's see whether or not he gets some game time. Obviously, Victor Gyökeres from Arsenal might start. He's obviously got more minutes in his legs. But it'll be interesting to see the way he performs, and there's obviously going to be questions thrown at him from their national journalists, and let's see if things get lost in translation in terms of him answering in Swedish, which often tends to be the case, and people kind of take elements of what he said and just change the narrative slightly. This is going to be an absolutely fascinating end to the transfer season. Tomorrow is my wedding anniversary on transfer deadline day, so hopefully my wife gives me some time off around 6 o'clock. I'll obviously be keeping my eye on the feed. If anything breaks and there's drastic news, I'll be trying to get the news out to you. But as always, let me know what your thoughts are. Obviously Newcastle's fans and chants in terms of calling Isak a see you next Tuesday during the game, is that going to have any impact? I think the Newcastle fans have expressed their views loud and clear. Most people don't want him to stay. Some people do, in terms of looking at the last 3 games, thinking where our goals going to come from. Are we going to pin all our hopes and dreams on Voltemade and think he's going to be able to carry the burden? We've got Barcelona in 19 days' time, home at St James's Park. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts. Do you want him to stay? Do you want that guy out the club? Who's going to be our second striker? How much are you prepared to pay for him? And where do you see the season going from here? As always, thank you very much. Help a guy out by hitting the like and subscribe. And don't forget,